The man, the merc, and more importantly, the master of all swords, Cut Energy Nightsword. It's finally time for an in-depth look at Gaff Gaffgarion. I'll be covering his appearance, background, giving a short summary story about him, and lastly, analyzing and looking at his overall character throughout the game, and even coming up with a few wild ideas and theories. The Virgo born on August 26th is one of the oldest characters in the game, being 52 years old, or he can be even older depending on your save file. Although there is no official FFT artwork of Gaff Gaffgarion, his depiction in War of the Visions show a more detailed look of his sprite in Tactics. He is heavily armored from head to toe in dark brown armor, white fur on his shoulders, although his face is partially revealed and the armor behind his legs look to be exposed according to Akihiko Yoshida's early concept art of him. For the events of FFT, Goffgard, aka Gaff, better known just by his last name, Gaffgarion, because he is a boss like that, was a commander in the Order of the Eastern Sky, which was another knightly order. Although he was expelled and stripped of his position at the end of the war due to being brutal, perhaps maybe being too ruthless to prisoners of war, or in trying to secure victory at all costs. Details aren't really specified here. Fast forward to the present day, and he is a mercenary who gets hired by Darg in secret, kidnap and get rid of Ovelia, so Prince Ornis can get crowned, while his uncle Duke Larg can act as regent. Gaffgarion also somehow gets into contact with the Lion's Guard, so he can get close to Princess Ovelia. Another mysterious or big question though was how much was he getting paid exactly, and why did the Lion's Guard and Ovelia want Northern Sky Knights for protection? The world may never know. Before coming to Orban, he meets both Ramza and Lad, aka Rad somehow, and they both join him as mercenaries. Or he could have known Lad beforehand, but again, there just aren't enough details here. They later go to Orban, and while they are waiting outside, Gaffgarion barges into the monastery, as the princess has kept them waiting for quite some time. The monastery gets attacked by fake Southern Sky soldiers, and Gaffgarion helps in defeating them. However, near the end of this fight, Ovelia gets kidnapped by Delita, and Gaffgarion along with Ramza and the Lion's Guard do give chase. At Dorder, they run into an ambush, and Gaffgarion is more than eager to fight, even though this one is a freebie on him. In the next area, depending on the player's choice of dialogue with Ramza, Gaffgarion does say some different things, but nevertheless, he joins in the fight versus the goblins and follows Ramza ultimately. After this fight in the forest at Sergio Falls is where Gaffgarion reveals his true intentions as a group of Northern Sky Knights surround Ovelia and Delita, giving him the perfect opportunity to kill Ovelia along with everyone else right then and there. Despite his combat prowess though, he is forced to retreat back to Egros, where he talks to Darg regarding the next steps. Darg wants Ovelia and anyone associated with her dead. This is where Gaffgarion asks about Ramza and what to do with them. Ultimately, if Ramza were to stand down, he would live, but if he were to interfere, Gaffgarion would have to kill him. In addition, Darg also makes a deal with the Cardinal somehow, in trying to use the princess as bait to obtain Mustadio's Zodiac Stone, allowing Gaffgarion to carry out his contract. It's also revealed that the original group of Northern Sky Knights that Darg sent were in fact killed. To fast forward into the story, Gaffgarion meets up with the Cardinal and Ludovic, and vows to get the Taurus Stone for him, and in turn, Princess Ovelia will be handed to Darg. This doesn't go as planned though, as the ambush at Golgotha Gallows ultimately fails due to Ramza's combat skill, and he also ends up being killed shortly after by Ramza at Lionel Castle Gate. And the last time he ever gets mentioned in the game is in the next battle, where the Cardinal first assumes that Gaffgarion was all talk, then realizes that the reason why Gaffgarion was defeated was because of Ramza's martial prowess as a Beowulf. With Gaff's summary out of the way, I wanted to analyze and take a deep look at his character and his interactions over the course of the story. I'll be kind of going all over the place, as I feel there are things to take into consideration. When we first see him, he seems to be quite brash, assertive, and clearly not a fan of respect in front of royalty, or even being mildly polite with the people who are around him. He also seems to like getting paid, fighting, and killing anyone who opposes him, as he is more than eager and excited to slay the fake Southern Sky Knights. But whatever does happen to this injured female knight part of the Lion's Guard, that is the real question to me. Moving on, after Ophelia is kidnapped, Gaffgarion does seem to show some kindness towards Ramza, as Ramza wanted to follow the Lion's Guard, and not only looking for Ophelia, but also Delita as well. Gaffgarion seems to get annoyed here. He ultimately tags along, probably thinking they can catch up to Delita. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that Gaffgarion knows of Ramza's true past as a Beowulf, yet he keeps it hidden during this time. I would assume that the Lion's Guard, as well as the princess, would want to know what kind of bodyguards or escorts would be around them, like their background, who they are, and whatnot. I know Ramza at this point takes his mother's last name, but it's cool to see that Gaffgarion doesn't give all his personal details. But a question that might be brought up is, how does Gaffgarion know about Ramza's past? From what I know, the story never explains this, but I want to assume that because of his time during the 50-Year War, he got to know Barboneth Beowulf, and he could clearly see a resemblance in father and son, not only from looks, but personality as well. As he tells Dicedard, too much of his father's penchant for justice, that one. So they may have had an interaction, possibly. Moving forward, before the group gets ambushed at Dorder, the sellsword, hired to take care of the group, does notice Gaffgarion and throws his hat down in shock about how he is getting paid so little to get rid of a well-known warrior, showing that Gaffgarion himself has quite a reputation. Before the battle starts, Gaffgarion is willing to take care of the enemies in front of him for free though, which does show he does have a nice side to him. Well, sorta. I don't know of many people willing to do tough work for free. It's like asking an attorney to do some work pro bono, or a contractor to build an extra bedroom and bathroom free of charge. And let's not forget, he loves teasing our lovely top model or holy knight. Even though he never outright says it, I do think he does find her somewhat attractive. After the battle has been won, he also teases her a little bit more. At Aragway Woods, Gaffgarion does reply differently to Ramza, depending on your choice of dialogue. In short, he'd much rather get paid than to save some chocobo, but he ultimately follows Ramza's decision, and at the end, hopes the bird can show some sense of gratitude. At Zurchill Falls, Gaffgarion does have quite a few more lines, assuming you extend the battle. Even though he doesn't know who Delita is, he is sharp and is more than quick to call him out, and knows there is no way that Delita was just going to rescue the princess in the name of justice. He just doesn't know his true motive, or who Delita is associated with. Gaffgarion is spot on about Delita though. He controls the princess, manipulates her, and bangs her, and what do you know, he's the king of Evilise. To Agrias, Gaffgarion states that the newly born Prince Ornis is the true heir, and that she is a lackwit for just swearing loyalty without even questioning things. While I think the situation is a little bit different because of her relationship with Ophelia, I do think Gaffgarion does get the big picture on a lot of people, where they just simply follow without being critical thinkers. And lastly, with Ramza, Gaffgarion tells it like it is, on how to be a real mercenary. He does what he is paid to do. But I will say he is wrong on this next line. I'm confident Ramza could have stopped him, as he defeated Wheatgraff back in Chapter 1. He also makes some very good points here about how life works, and that if he didn't accept this job, someone else would have, and that is how the cookie crumbles ultimately. Life is very cruel, and Gaffgarion's last remark states that Ramza is in no position to scold him, as he is so young, and he can't even decide on his own path in life. Despite Ramza questioning, defying, and even defeating him, he does ask about what to do with him at Egros Castle to Dicedarg, which I found a bit shocking. I'm not sure about you, but if some young kid with much less experience silenced me and forced me to retreat, I'd be pretty upset myself. Even though he has a reputation and is quite ruthless, he does show some kindness to Ramza, and he is a bit cautious about the Cardinal's trap at the gallows, and he does drop some true and good knowledge with words of wisdom in this quote. At the gallows, assuming if you don't finish him off quick, Gaffgarion does tell Ramza that he can return with him to Egros and that Dicedarg would forgive him. Despite Ramza ruining his plans earlier and humiliating him, this is a nice offer from Gaffgarion, and we can't forget that he even had the decency to mention his name when talking to Dicedarg. Sadly, he finally does spill the beans about Ramza being a Beowulf to Agrias, but he's probably just angry at this point. He also mentions that there was no avoiding Zeekden and Teacher's death, and that Ramza should be more like his brothers as a Beowulf. His attempts at convincing Ramza don't work, and this is where he is fully intent on killing him. In his final conversation with Agrias, he does show some respect, as he doesn't tease her here. He answers all her questions honestly and states that he was once honorable, but that is long gone now. For me personally, I found Gaffgarion to be an awesome character in the game, and even named my World of Warcraft character after him. Even though most consider him rude, and he definitely can be at times, he is just being himself, and he isn't afraid to speak his mind at all, which I admire, and he calls out everybody. He is also the definition of being a true pro mercenary, and he also has the skills and reputation to back this up. Despite being quite ruthless, he does seem to care about Ramza, and even goes out of his way to ask Dicedarg about him, despite being outclassed at Zercho Falls. He even tries to convince Ramza a few times at the gallows before wanting to outright kill him. We also have to take into account about how he takes Ramza in as a mercenary sometime after the events of Chapter 1, but he probably showed him the ropes in getting some kind of mercenary work before coming to Orban. Last but not least, he likes to poke fun at our lovely Holy Knight at times, maybe teasing her in a fun way, or maybe he's just being a jerk. But regardless, we can't forget and have to take into consideration that he was willing to do a freebie at Dorder, which you will rarely see in people doing all kinds of jobs. So in a few ways, he can be a nice guy. With all that being said though, this was my video analyzing Gaffgarion. Personally, he was a highlight of mine in the game as both a character in the story and gameplay wise. As soon as I saw that Night Sword, I just knew it was going to be an awesome one. Too bad he just never joins the party. Let me know what you think of Gaffgarion yourself, if you love him, hate him, or have mixed feelings. As always, thank you for watching, and all the best to you.